add to that, into the energy, or as we're closing this?
Yeah, I
Healing?
think on a personal level, my romantic relationships were a shit show. Can I say that?
Yeah.
Sorry. I mean, it was a rocky road. And so that's what was coming up just now in terms of what were some of these other relationships and how was I showing up. And there was a lot to learn. So,
Yeah. So we're just bringing that light. It's almost like a stitch that's closing. That's how I see it energetically right now. And just inviting everyone acting with that to just breathe that in, and like for your relationships, breathing that in, like letting it be healed now. It's all right. Anywhere you've still had tenderness or hurt or regret, let's just like let ourselves feel some closure here.
I'm also feeling in this energy, there's a sense of everyone starting to get their footing after. So, this is interesting because kind of come into the field that you've set the tone for, but whatever it is that's come up around this separation in the relationships, I can just feel that on the other side of this healing, there's okay, I'm starting to get my footing in terms of who I am in this way and how things shift. So it feels like a powerful healing and a powerful kind of turning the corner.
Hmm. Yeah, so just letting ourselves feel some light and some opening and some realization of why it had to be that way. And the reality that sometimes that's true, and sometimes you come back together because like here we are again, like in now, like actually reoriented in the right roles in our relationship. And
Yes.
I feel like we actually have a similar friendship and like allyship as we did before, but like we were in like the wounded versions of that. Like, like I don't know. I'll just speak for myself, but it's like I like being this like nurturing, like guiding, supportive force in someone's life. And it was like at that time in my life, I was more in this like rescuer place that would go into resentment from like over rescuing and then not knowing how to ask for what I needed. And like not knowing how to allow things to be reciprocal. It's not even like people didn't want it to be reciprocal. I like couldn't receive it. And so I really can see that pattern for other like really like women with a lot of energy to give, is like I see where they don't let it back in and the wreckage it creates in their relationships and for themselves, because often they're not seeing what's completely there to receive and to,
Yes.
you know what I mean? So like I just feel like really enjoy the exchange we have now. That's like the evolved, healed version. Like I don't want to speak for you to like who you think you are in the relationship, but I just like know for me it was like yeah, like that, and that's how I was with everyone. But obviously you and I
Yeah.
were working on something in such an intense way that it like the story was very loud for me of like that, but it was, like this is what's exciting is when you do the healing work, you can come back into relationships that are really meant to be in your life and actually get to have the thing that was trying to be there in the relationship.
So what's really interesting is at that time I didn't have the capacity to sit in someone else's perspective and be not just sensitive to that, but to have a real awareness of their experience. And now that is an integral part to what I do with clients. So
So
that's a
good.
pretty, a pretty interesting 360. I just, it was, it's not that it wasn't within me, obviously, because this is where I sit now. But again, we were just young and early on in the journey. And so there was just so much that was not in my capacity or my radar based on my own wounding that was kind of being worked out and what was being healed or needed to still be healed. And now in sessions, it's really sitting in a space and tuning into the energy of the other and having this co-creative experience where you're completely aware of what that is. So
That's that's amazing. And it's like,
mhm.
right, it's part of the thing of like your wounding is what you're here to offer, but it means that you have to heal it first, not monetize.
Right.
Don't monetize your wounding, which we've seen many people do in the Pluto and Capricorn era, and maybe before that too. But we weren't, that this era has been the age where we would know about those things. But yeah, like, I mean, obviously, why wouldn't I be having that rescuer programming? I mean, my whole family had cancer at the time I was developing into a young woman. So it's like I can have compassion for why that was my way of coming at people that I wanted to have closeness and care with. And it's just like the reality is like I have to take accountability for where it created wreckage for myself, or created fractures for myself and for other people, even though like I completely get how I got there. And obviously, like, I'm still here to do this type of work. And so it's a nuanced thing to know how to be a guide and a facilitator and also not be a rescuer. And also still have, I mean, something we've talked a lot about is like having understanding everyone's humanity. Like part of what we've healed through this era is like the guru thing, like pedestalizing other people, assuming other people knew more than us, assuming other people were on our level of integrity because of similar interests or status inside of the things we were interested in, status level they had in that, and realizing like we're not on the same level or vibe at all or values at all, but also just like, having compassion for the reality. It's like that's how you figure out what your values are. And that's how.
And we really took a deep dive. I mean, it's at this point we're not, I don't think, going to go into like all the layers or details of that, but we started with one thing, and there was there were other rounds of other things. It was like, okay, let me dive into this. All right, no, I'll just try this. I'll try this other one. So again, I mean, that was just the journey that brought us here. So there's a lot that is beautiful and
Right.
exciting about that. But yeah, coming back around to, I am my own guru, and what
Right.
is my identity? And also approaching things in a way that is humble and authentic. I mean, we both, in the work that we do, are in roles as mentors and teachers and healers. And, but, coming full circle from all of this, it's really an honor to hold space with people and for people. But I do feel very humble. I am down. I feel like I'm putting my head down. I am in this discipline energy still of what do I need to be looking at? What do I need to claim? What do I need to heal? And it's just about right now in the present and really taking accountability for it, whatever it is. So I think with the guru piece, it's just, hey, we're all human, and there's a real, like I was saying before, you can have mastery of something and you can have discipline and you can delve into the thing, but you're only doing the work if you're doing the work. So I guess that's important to say. I'm just feeling it so strongly. There's a lot out there now, and this isn't about anyone or anything really besides us and our journey, but just in the collective, there's a lot of people doing a lot of things, especially in the new age realm, and everyone is on their journey with what they're doing. But as someone like whoever's listening, tuning into sort of how you navigate your own journey and who you connect with as teachers and mentors, and sort of what you learn and what has a magnetism for you, having a little bit of discernment around how that shows up, I think is important. So just clarifying that there's if someone is being humble, if there's just an authenticity, I want to say that. And now maybe you can clarify it or speak to it more, but you're only doing the work if you're doing the work. I'll say it again. It's just that somebody could be saying, hey, do this thing, try this thing, I live this way, I have this healthy practice, or I have this spiritual practice, and You know intuitively by being in their field if they're doing the thing or not doing the thing.
Yeah,
And if they're not doing it, it's not a judgment, but they don't
right.
need to be your teacher because you are your own guru. So it's different if you're sharing. And yes, there are like, yes, being containers, learn things, have teachers and mentors, but have that discernment.
Yeah. I really agree. I think like that's where this cycle and journey has taken us is the realization of um, we all need time and space to heal and then embody a healed version. Like we're given these gifts, we often are working with the distorted version of the gifts. And then it's like we do our healing work through which all happens through connection and through relationships and through experiences. And then we begin to embody the healed version of those things. But yeah, there's a nuanced thing of just like realizing everybody's human and at the same time, like, we're allowed to all have standards of what we require from people we share space or receive from. And,
And boundary.
what we require from people who share space and are gonna, like, receive from us, right?
Yes.
Like, I think it's just, like, learning what your values and your standards are and and letting that help you make the decisions. So
And I think I'll just say this to tack that onto to it because we're coming into a space where women are coming into more expanded versions of their own power and their own capacity with whatever the thing is, whatever your version is of that. And so just really honoring that and knowing that you have everything you need. It just feels important. It's really simple, but
yeah. Yeah, but you sometimes have to go through all of that to really have
yeah, exactly.
so, yeah, so basically, just to end it, it's like, right, so we went on kind of our own paths. We both at some point moved out of Chicago, like around 2016, I moved to the West Coast. Pavan
Oh,
moved
that's when I moved to Charleston. Yeah.
right. You moved to the Hamptons and then you moved to Charleston and we kind of like continued on our own journeys for several of the years of this transit. But obviously like really with instilled experiences and beliefs and wounds and healings that happened from really the beginning of this transit together. And then like, I would say we then were, like, in touch and happy for each other, but didn't see each other too often because we were just on, like, really different life trajectories, and that was when, like, you had moved to Charleston, I was living in LA and, like, really in a very intense Capricorn level of, like, running the Akashic business and feeling a lot of pressure and, like, expanding in a big way and, like, still not quite taking care of myself fully, but really trying, and then, like, sort of just having a big collapse around 2019 where it turned out the beach house I was living in had a lot of mold. I ended up having to do a big body healing. And then also at that time, like there was a lot of loss in my family. But the big loss that happened was my brother who had been on this journey with Pavan and I this whole time, like doing his work in this, so we were all always still connected. We were all doing this work together. My brother had created this big business in functional medicine and also a Capricorn rising, an Aquarius sun, Capricorn rising. Um,
Hmm.
and working in functional medicine, working in qigong, like we kind of were all in our own fields in different parts of the country. So like I think we all were still connected and thinking fondly, of our time
Yes.
where we were all more connected. But like I was in LA doing the Akashic thing. Pavan was in Charleston doing shamanic work. My brother was in like New York and Miami running the functional medicine and running his qigong programs, and then he unexpectedly passed away in spring of 2019, and it was a undiagnosed heart condition from the cancer treatments from when we were young that had like initiated us into doing this type of work. So that like meant pulling the plug on the whole
Yeah.
reality in life I had going on, coming back to my hometown, healing from this devastation, healing with my relationship with my mother, doing some lawsuit work around what happened for my brother, which was like a spiritual deep spiritual akashic experience was the wrongful death lawsuit. And and also like what I do have gratitude for, because I see this a lot for spiritual entrepreneurs, is like thinking what they're doing is too big and too important, and like they're starting to fall, the cracks are starting, the wheels are coming off, and they are so deep in this story, in this Capricorn era of like, I can't stop now, like there's too much at stake, like I'm running too many things, what I'm doing is too important, what too many people are relying on this, and it's like there's nothing like having someone, your person in the world in the prime of their life, die unexpectedly, who also was running huge things, and it felt like there's no way he could stop now. Look what's going on
Right.
in his world and his business. How could he die right now? There's nothing like that happening that will help you realize you can stop anything that needs to fucking stop at any fucking time. And if
Yeah.
that's what needs to happen, life will rearrange itself for that to happen. So that was a huge learning from the Capricorn cycle for me. And I still watch people that I just just know we're all on our own journey about it. But we've had people, we've watched up close people lose, pass on or just lose integrity, thinking they don't have time to unplug and rearrange and reorient. But that was a huge unplugging. And that was also the reunification fully, I think, of our relationship, because
Yes.
Yvonne reached out to me when Gabe died, and it was like, I just remember getting your voicemail. I was getting like so many voicemails that day, and it was like yours was the voicemail where I was just, you just like got it in a different, like I think people were just in total shock. No one knew what to say or do. It was so intense. It's not like I didn't get other great voicemails, but it was like something
Sure.
about this, the sound current of what you said. It was just like you just know how to be in the field of it. Like, you understood what had happened spiritually and literally and logistically, and it just, like, landed in a different way. Like, I just still remember that, and it just reminded me, like, yeah, like, you were there at the beginning of this cycle of Gabe and I going into this world, kind of catalyzed from the trauma of him being sick and our dad dying, and, like, then going out into this world with such fire to do our work, and on some level now realizing that I couldn't see until Gabe died, to try to like prevent anything happening to Gabe, to try to make atone for our dad not being able to save our dad, and yeah, it was like really a huge reunification
Right.
of our relationship.
The pressure behind all that, I
Sure.
think. And
Yeah.
yeah, definitely. Well, thank you for saying that. I think in the field also, it's, certainly early on in this, we were all very close, and then, like you said, we kind of diverged, and stayed connected. But that aspect of being in the field, right? It's like we were in the energy of the thing. I don't mean to make it sound vague, but for all of each other. And so, yeah, there were a lot of connected threads, and that timeline. Too, I am married now, but that was the same timeline where I was potentially shifting in a different direction and had that pause. And so, really, at that time, I was sort of going, okay, this may not be the right relationship. This may not be the right path. Had just kind of set up different plans to go a different way. And then now I'm married, and there was like a complete 360 from that. But it was, I gave up my business and I gave up all of my clients, and I put a pause on everything for a period of time before I got back to it, which was really 2020. And then the pandemic hit. So,
Wow, I didn't realize we had a pause at the same time.
yeah,
That's crazy. But yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, I mean, and so I wanna take a moment here, and I also, I mean, not like a justification, but, like, obviously, I haven't really talked about my brother too much in this podcast, even though he was a big part of our crew. Like, that's not, I don't know, that's just not that's not the location we've been in, and, like,
yeah.
and I don't know how much we're gonna talk about it right now, really. But I obviously, like, I can't even state how profoundly that has changed my life. I actually wrote a book about it that's coming out soon. So I mean, like, there's more. I just am
Well,
thinking too. That's kind of a heavy thing that we're probably not going to get so into. That is another part of the Capricorn era, and is really part of our reunification. Was Gabe's. Yes.
And I'll say one thing about it as far as, you mentioned that voicemail, and one thing that I was very aware of is just the relationship that the two of you had, which was a real soul connection. And honestly, the closest, deepest relationship, certainly of siblings, but you could say, I mean, of also friends that I have ever seen. Uh, to this day, I mean, I have not come across that. So, it was just, I mean, it's a rare thing. And so
Yeah.
I don't know what else to say about it,
Yeah,
but it's just
it's
like very
true.
unique. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's what I mean, so I feel like this is just a location on the map that we're tracking here, which I think
Yes.
might be a two-part. This
Right.
well, I mean, like,
Yeah.
even I don't we're not even gonna, like, record again. I think this just probably
It is, yes, it's going to
a
be
two-part.
digestible in two
It's gonna
pieces.
be a
Yeah.
two-parter. If you're listening, this is probably the second part.
Yeah.
Um, and yeah, I think, like, I just wanna give a sacred pause to the
Yes.
sacred pause that people may have had in this cycle of Capricorn, which can create a lot of like shame and fear, of like, what do you mean I can't work, or we're not working? I think we saw everyone lose their mind in the sacred Capricorn era pause of COVID. People whose identity, especially people who are extremely identified with their external work persona, or the attributes and the goals and the achievements they've made externally and professionally, had a huge crisis in COVID. And our we were already, because we're Aquarian, 2019 was like we were already in that experience of that sort of unplug and really having to let go of our professional identities for a moment, when we had been so tethered to our professional identities since 2007, 2008 period. And so in 2019, we both have this parallel experience of like having to unplug from our work professional identities to really do the real work. And both of them had to do with our relationships, obviously. Like, for me, my family and grief and my health, and for you, your relationship that you're in, and moving and reorienting to be able to be in the relationship in the right way for everybody. And yeah, I just want to invite people to just like drop in to a pause or a loss of identity or a loss of work that maybe you had during this experience, and just to like bring some reverence to that. If you've seen that, maybe you lost your job or something, just like bringing some reverence and deeper understanding to that pause and why it needed to happen. Sometimes it's obvious, sometimes it's not. And just feeling anywhere you still have stress or worry that this pause has created a problem or is an issue still, like just realizing like how right that pause was and how right a pause always is. Yeah. Yeah. Even though, yeah, just taking a breath here, you know, and, even though I'd give anything, I'd never take if I would give anything for that not to be the reason why I took a pause, but I think it was really required, and it really prepared me to be someone who is able to come into this new season understanding what really matters, and the reality that like your personal well-being and relationships have to be grounded and centered to even really enjoy the collective relationships, the collective and external success, and the way you're supporting the well-being of the world. Like, that only really can be felt and received and enjoyed if you're making sure you are well in your most on the ground inner circle private life. you know? We all go through struggles and challenges, and it was kind of cool to experience being in deep grief and also working with clients, you know, when I did come back because I was in deep grief. I'm still, you know, I'm integrated now because it's been 5 years. I'm still, you know, I'm forever changed and altered, but, like, I'm in a different place than I was a few years ago, but I was able to effectively work with people during that time too. So there's like a right time for all different experiences, even though my work had to look a little different. But yeah, I just think it's really important, and I'm really grateful to have had that big unplug and plugged back in with a new reality that the beginnings of Capricorn era did not teach me. Even though I wish I could have learned it in a different way.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, I can say that pause was just another, um, I can't imagine doing the work and holding the space in the way that I get to, or being where I am just in my personal life now, if I hadn't taken a pause and restructured things in true Capricorn fashion. I was not prioritizing various aspects of my personal life that would just be fundamental no brainers to many people. So, yeah.
Yeah. So the kind of the last piece I want to just say is like something I've really enjoyed in our connection in the last part of Capricorn season era was just like that pause helped me really prioritize things that I hadn't yet allowed to be a priority when I was just so focused on the mission and the experiences related to the mission. So like we ended up living closer to each other because I lived in this really beautiful high rise in St. Pete, Florida for a while, and Pavan was in Charleston, and I like had the first experience of just like really getting to just like I started the book that is I now finished, and I got to just like heal and recalibrate and like enjoy making my home a space just for enjoyment rather than like its function and its purpose in all these other ways. And at that time, Pavan was planning her wedding, and like something I've really learned during the Capricorn era is just like how important milestones are of all types, like traditional milestones, non-traditional milestones, like the experience of what I did to transition my brother's life and the memorials. I just done many things on his behalf on many dimensions in this world and
Yes.
others. And it's like those were really profound milestones. And then like I just feel like we talked about this before, but like we didn't always make it to like the weddings or the events that that if they cut into things we thought we had to do for work. And that's something that totally changed for me after that sacred pause. And I love participating in really deep ways in people's milestones now, like happy and sad. But you know, one of the happy ones that we really got into, you know, in the last couple years of the Capricorn was your wedding and like really having a really fun experience, like spiritually and literally. Uh,
Yeah, it was really fun. And it was also, another time it turned out that it was really perfect to be supporting each other. And actually, Ali supported me immensely on a spiritual level. And there were things that I wasn't even aware of that I needed to, well, I don't want to say need, but it was a benefit to me to close those loops or to get clear on maybe what that piece was going to look like instead of not looking at it before suddenly you're, at the wedding and you don't know what's going to happen. So we were able to be in a really fun energy. Yes, it was a lot of fun, but also, um, the meaning of these rituals as well has just landed in a new way for me, because the spiritual context is, there's profound healing. I mean, there can be, or maybe not, but I definitely opt for the former. So,
yeah, and like and you can just have fun and
yes.
celebrate and just
Yeah.
that's a huge learning in this 16-year season was like there's room for all of it. There's room for the material, there's room for the spiritual, there's room for grief, there's room for like joy, like that we have to allow everything. there has to be space for all the important things. You were saying before we started, like the way we came into this season thinking only certain things could be prioritized, and then whatever was left over could go to these other things. And I think as we come into this time that's really about connection and collective, like there, we actually really need to let everything that's part of being a human, a well rounded human being, like we need room for all the things, and
Right. And there were
they all
times
get
where we were still separating the spiritual from the physical, from the emotional, and kind of compartmentalizing things. And, this Aquarian age is really about the spiritual piece is fully integrated, not just that piece, but all of it is integrated. So I think we were chatting about also to do this work in a modern context. Of course, we're seeing a lot more of it now, which is a great thing. But historically, when you go back, there was, it was like people were not necessarily making money doing the things we do, or, there was a lot of rules like, okay, you're celibate and you don't make money, and somebody gives you a chicken for it, or, you still have, I mean, I'm taking it back, like historically,
right.
far from where we are, but there's entrenched mentalities around how these things have gone. And really, we're in a time where nothing is more or less important. So if your work is in the spiritual, or it's more centered in the physical, in a different space, we're recognizing that's a layer of the reunification also. It's not separate, it's all integrated and equal. So that's true in terms of careers people choose, but it's just that's where we are with our life experience, which is really pretty exciting.
Yeah, I feel like well, I just want to pause us again and just like invite people to think of just a really joyous occasion that happened that like maybe they just want to remember, and remember that that was a priority, like something really joyful and fun. So just dropping in and thinking of something that really brings a lot of happiness to you when you remember it, something really happy that happened during this cycle. And letting the memories of that's something I've learned, like being participating in all these happy milestones, like they nourish you and that you return to those memories. Like I, can think of it right now. Yeah. Gratitude for that. And yeah, I think we're just like kind of closing the loop. I like how this went. So I think we're just kind of like landing in sort of the last location as we enter the new world. So like what do you want to share about what rounding the corner? Anything else you want to share? Anything you're feeling as we have come into Aquarius?
I have a dog barking in the background, which I think is hopefully just about to tamper down a bit. But
Yeah.
I think what's coming up the most is, you brought up the wedding and like joy and celebration as a priority. For me, a big part of the trajectory of those 16 years that we've discussed. Yes, it was a piece of things, but it wasn't in balance and it wasn't often in the forefront. And I married Matt, my husband, on the beach, and it was in one of our favorite places, Folly Beach in South Carolina. It was very low pressure. It was fun. It is something I remember super fondly, and so I'm grateful that the place I'm in now is a much more grounded space than the beginning of this transit, where also I have the space for, I'm going to say everything. There's a spot, there's a seat for joy, and there's a seat for, sorrow, and there's a seat for all the things. And this deeper acknowledgement that all of that is a part of the tapestry of life and the richness. And so a lot of what was blocking this capacity to fully move in the life experience has fallen away.
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Just really coming in like a very full, yeah, just like a full, nourished, grounded, like everything has a seat at the table sort of
Yes.
way. And yeah, I feel similarly. I feel like coming to the end of this transit, the last half of this, well, the whole thing really has been a lot about family and ancestral medicine for me. Like when we planted the seeds in 2008, so much of why I had this fire and why I wanted to go in the direction I did during this 16-year cycle had to do with the experiences I had had in my family, but I hadn't let I was so focused on the actions I needed to do because of what had happened rather than like my inner what I really needed having had those experiences. And so like the last several years of this transit were really about coming back to the family home, making peace, working through the grief, feeling the empty space, and also learning how to open to be bigger so that I could do things on behalf of where there, are not physical people in the family, and moving my mom out of the family home and getting her to Florida, and just really immersing myself in family ancestral healing and work, and understanding my role in it, and like learning not to be victimized by that, and understanding sometimes like the most successful powerful work has to happen close to the roots, and it doesn't mean you won't branch out again. And so like now as I'm kind of closing out, it's like the book I wrote about that experience is going to come out in the next couple of months. I just got a car yesterday, the first day of Pluto and Aquarius, which really feels connected too to just like prioritizing new types of things, like allowing other types of experiences and adventures. And yeah, and just the realization of like there's room for all of it. Like there's room for all of it, as you're saying, like just allowing like everything to be part of the profound journey. And yeah, I'm just tuning into like what feels like the most important thing I'm really seeing as I come in to this circle, this cycle. I think like we never have to go faster than our slowest part, and we never have to go harder or faster than the the space and the place that allows us to like really receive the reason why we're doing things, and the love, and like the service we're actually here to have. Like just we never have to override what's happening. Like, and I
Yeah,
think I often felt like earlier in this cycle, like I needed to override what was happening for me in my heart, or in my body, or in my life, or in my family, or in my relationships for the mission. And now it's like it's all the mission. And like I never need to override what's happening.
I love that. Aho.
Oh,
Yes.
so yeah, and I just have so much gratitude for everything that participated in this cycle, everyone who participated, like the way we've been kind of stewards for each other through this cycle. And just like I just want to drop in here just for anyone who's listening with us, just like what you're realizing as you move through all the locations, the important teachings have been for you of this cycle, the gratitude, what you're releasing, what has released for you in this cycle, dropping lower into the body, into the pelvis, and what you've brought in during this cycle, and what's coming with you next. What are you going to allow yourself to receive? What are you going to allow yourself to offer? And, here we go. Yes.
I mentioned being in a women being in a more feminine empowered place, and something that's coming as closing to me is I mentioned that, and then something that came up in the last couple of minutes is the masculine edge and energy of the Capricorn energy, which I also have a fair amount in my chart. And so there's this opportunity now, that receiving that you're talking about. There's this opportunity for an acknowledgement of being in that receptive space is the feminine empowerment. And I'll also say the power. So sometimes it can seem like being in that feminine energy. And I think we've largely transitioned from this, but to some degree, maybe that feels like weak or, whatever connotations there are. But in actuality, being in the balance and being in that receptive energy is so powerful. What you can expand into moves far beyond if you are sort of trying to squeeze that into a masculine shoe. So take that as you will. Obviously, we're all, we all have both of these energies as a component, but we're just coming into a time where the receptive piece is the key, I believe.
Yeah. Yeah. I love it. It feels like it's like coming to the Aquarian age, but in a really balanced place. Not in a heady place, not into just constant futuristic thinking, but like actually allowing the boldest and like brightest and like best, most connected elements of this sort of cycle. And
We're here now.
yeah,
Yeah, it
we're
just
here
feels
now.
like we're here now.
And another pattern like I've really seen for people I work with is just realizing like we don't have to choose one or the other. Like that's I think what we're really saying was our learning through this path, but it's like yeah, like we get to have the non-traditional and the traditional. We get to have the Aquarian and the Capricorn. Like we get
Yes.
to have the feminine and the masculine. Like we don't have to prioritize one thing over another. Like we get to have the spiritual experience and be like grounded in the physical earthly experiences as well. Like the technology and also like really getting to the ground level of really connecting with like the earth. I just think it's like all part of this timeline and I'm really excited to see what that's going to look like.
Yeah, me too. What that looks like now is, unprecedented. It's exciting, uncharted
Yeah.
territory.
All right. This was great. Um yeah.
Yes, thank you all for tuning in with us. And you can find us, Allie's Allie Reyna, on Instagram, pavanserona.com. Certainly, we would love to hear about your experience in the comments or anything else you would like to share. And if you want to add anything in terms of
No,
how
just
to
like stay
find you.
tuned and I'd really love to hear how this conversation resonated for you, what you found as we kind of mapped the locations of this cycle together, what this maybe brought up with like your own relationships and where you're headed. And yeah, I'm sure we'll have another way to offer together soon.
All right. Thank you so much, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.